Welcome to the Forest Analytics Landing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Russell. In this podcast, we'll talk about how data and analytics are transforming the forest products industry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I want to talk about data, specifically forest inventory and analysis data. And I wanted to talk about this because as I work with companies and organizations, they often come to me, or I often need to use data to help analyze problems that they have. But there are different ways of accessing a great data set like FIAs, depending on the needs and the situation. So I think this podcast is important because I want to convey that there's often a lot of hesitancy with accessing FIA data because there's so much of it, and because there's a lot of it out there that people are hesitant, and it can be intimidating to go in and use a data set of that size. And so I do want to talk about some things and how you kind of work with FIA data, but don't necessarily have to get your hands dirty with the complete data sets that have been collected, whether it's in your state or in your region of interest. And so I want to talk really about 4 different ways, and they kind of build on one another. The first one I'll talk about is really simple, up to the 4th one where you can actually get your hands dirty with the raw data. And so just a little bit of a background on the Forest Inventory Analysis Program. It is the nation's forest census, and so it's run by the U.S. Forest Service. And so it's often folks from the Forest Service, or sometimes they contract with state agencies or even private consultants to measure the status and trends of our forests. And so if you look across the United States, there's about 1 FIA plot in the forest for every 6,000 acres of forest land. And so that's an incredibly rich data set. A lot of people often work with data that have been collected recently, so they want to get a chance to look at the status of their forests. And so they might just look at the last time the forest was measured, and that's kind of being what's close enough to current day so they can understand things like the stocking and the species composition and the structure and density of the forest. So that's a great thing that people often turn to FIA data for. Another approach is that the good thing about the FIA data is there's a time series. And so depending on the state you're in, FIA programs started to collect annual inventories dating back to the late 1990s. And so you have a record of the same plots being remeasured, sometimes up to as close as 5 times now, with great information on the status and trends of our forests. And so it depends on where you're located. In the eastern states, it's about every 5 to 7 years that an FIA plot is remeasured. In the western states, it's more in a 10-year remeasurement cycle. But either way, most of those plots have some remeasurement data. So you have kind of a time series, at least dating back the last 20, 25 years or so, that you could have a look at. And so I'll jump into it and kind of talk about some ways of accessing FIA data. And the first way I'll mention is really just to look at a state's fact sheet. And so there are lots of these different kinds of fact sheets available depending on the state that you're working in. And so I'll first kind of mention the FIA program has an excellent set of fact sheets available. And I will include links to all of these resources that I mentioned in the notes that you can have a look at. And so the Forest Inventory Analysis Program has these one-click fact sheets. If you go to their site, you basically get a map of the United States, and you can click on the link to whatever state you're interested in. And so those state fact sheets are updated as the annual inventory data are collected. And so as an example, I can click on one like the state of Maine, and I can get a sense, and all of these are formatted the same depending on the state. And so you can get a sense of, what's the area of forest land, number of live trees, volume of live trees, what's the ownership look like in terms of private versus public, how much has grown in the last several years, how much acreage is disturbed by different things like fire and other disturbances, how much is cut, through harvest or thinning every year. And so depending on your needs, that might be kind of the resolution of data that you're interested in. And so that could be just plenty for what you need to go ahead and use for your analysis or for a project report or something that you're putting together. If you're interested in the forest carbon aspects of that, I have developed through the Forest Resources Association state level fact sheets that focus on the forest carbon resource. And so those are very easy to use. They're simple graphs showing carbon stocks and general carbon sequestration rates in the forest, along with how the trends are in the forest in terms of total carbon stored in forests within a state. That goes back to 1990. And then we have some additional information just about the general trends and how carbon is different across the different ecosystem pools, like in above ground biomass, below ground biomass, soils, and all those different pools. And so honestly, when I talk to people, that's the kind of resolution they might need for their analysis. And so those state fact sheets are pretty darn good for that use the FIA data. And so I encourage you to have a look at those. Another great product that is developed by the Forest Service is they provide an engagement portfolio. And so they describe these as rich interactive experiences for the public while making forestry data available to resource professionals and other users. And so this is a series of different ways to interact with the data. And I think it's a great resource for folks that maybe need to do more, maybe tell a story with the data. And so a lot of these products have been developed through ArcGIS and a partnership program the Forest Service has with some of the with Esri folks. And I think this is a great tool. And so like I can click on one of them that looks at tree species distribution in the U.S. And so they've got kind of these different things by different states. And so I can click on the Michigan, and you can kind of see for the primary species in Michigan, like eastern hemlock, sugar maple, red maple, you can see kind of the different distributions as they've modeled them through this approach. And so there's some great ways to kind of look at that, and you can download that figure file and include that if you wanted to. And so those are another great way to access the FIA data is through these interactive reports through the Forest Inventory and Analysis Program. Another great way to access data is through Evalidator. And so Evalidator is an application program interface that allows you to get population level estimates for some of the core forestry metrics. And so for things like carbon, tree volume, biomass, lots of people turn to Evalidator to get some of that information. And so it provides the ability to query FIA data at the state level, or you can do a circular retrieval of information around some point. And so as an example, if you're the owner of a sawmill and you want to know what is the hardwood resource within a 50-mile radius of the mill, well, Evalidator will allow you to do that. And so that's a great tool to really get more refined estimates based on your state or your region for what you're interested in. Now, there's been some recent developments in Evalidator, which I really like, and I think it's a great tool. And as you can kind of tell, we're getting more into getting our hands really on top of the data as we're going through these different ways to access data. The version now is built in Java. That might not mean much to you, kind of on the back end as a user. Greatly improved in terms of how it looks and how it feels. What I've often done in the past when I've run Evalidator is I'll run it to get a sense of what's the average amount of carbon per acre by county in the state of Maine, say as an example. And so that would be, Evalidator is a great tool for that because it kind of tell you, okay, here's how many FIA plots are located in those counties. Here's the average stocking, and you could even add other variables, like separate that out by different stand ages. And so that's an incredible resource to do that. But what I always found was difficult with the Evalidator is you kind of get this output and then you can copy and paste it into Excel or some other program, and you can kind of include that into a report or something you're working on. What I really like now is that you can actually run an Evalidator script and you can copy and paste the URL and then send that to a colleague or send that and include that in the report. That way you don't have to worry about kind of mixing those tables, copying all that information from a table over to something else or into another data set that you read into another software program. It's just an incredibly great thing to be able to do that now in a tool like Evalidator, because the Evalidator as it is, it's a great interface, but it is point and click and it's hard to replicate. And so if you do something and you have a certain set of conditions and you try to tell someone else to do that, well, they might not click the same buttons and things that you clicked. So having that ability to show people what work you've done by just sending them a link makes it really good. And so I really encourage you, if you really need more local estimates or you need more population level estimates, the Evalidator program is a great resource to dive into that and to access FIA data. And then the last one I'll talk about is the FIA Data Mart. And this is another great tool that's been updated recently that allows you to retrieve really the core data that make up the FIA program. And so a lot of those core data sets are linked by state. And so you can go in, you can select, okay, I want all the tree measurements from the state of Wisconsin, and you can go and find that data table and then read in that data table and kind of use that. Now that's going to be the most data that you can get. So as you can see, this is kind of like, if you're a power user, you might be going into the Data Mart to access the core data that you're interested in working with. What I like now in the updates, the kind of landing page for Data Mart relies and it resides on an Esri platform. And so when you go to the Data Mart page, one thing people often ask, well, what's the most recent year of data that was collected? And so that differed by state, depending on who was measuring, and certainly with COVID, it disrupted a lot of the field activities and field campaigns. And so what I like is when you go to the FIA Data Mart webpage now, the map that you see is here's the most recent data available for each state. And so that's just a great resource to have right in front of you. So you're able to see, okay, in my state, the last year of measurements was 2020. And so that's a great resource to be able to see that. And so what you do is, the way it is now, if you use this application, you basically click on the state you want, and then you get all the data tables listed with that state. Now there are a ton of data tables, so you really have to know kind of what you're looking for if you go in and use this approach. And these are approaches really that researchers and scientists and the people really involved in wanting to answer detailed questions, the ones that they typically use to access the FIA database. And so when you go in there, the data that can be downloaded as comma delimited files, SQLite databases, or as Excel workbooks. And so that's just an incredible, great resource for accessing the FIA data. And so I hope this has been helpful. Again, just kind of, I'll include all the links to these in the notes. But again, I think as I talk to people, as I mentioned, they often just need some information. They don't need to get their hands dirty with the complete millions and millions of records of tree IDs that other people often turn to. And so while accessing large databases like FIA can be intimidating, there's lots of different flavors and lots of different ways to get it that don't have to be intimidating. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the Forest Analytics Landing Podcast. For more information on how data and analytics can empower your organization, visit arbor-analytics.com.